On the morning of August 10, 1984, Carol Hugall said goodbye to her daughter before her husband drove her to work. By the time Carol returned home, her daughter was missing. This is the case of Kelly Jean Harris. Kelly Jean Harris had been moving around a lot in the year of 1984. Though she had previously been staying with her father in Pasadena, Maryland, Kelly had been spending the summer with her mother, Carol Hugall. Kelly's next stop was to move in with her great-aunt in California after the summer holiday. Kelly and her mother were not the only people to reside in the home on the 100 block of Lincoln Court in Jackson. With them was Carol's husband, Leonard Hugall. Carol would, years later, go on to describe the relationship between Kelly and her stepfather that summer as strained. On the morning of Kelly's disappearance, August 10, 1984, Carol was about to leave for work when she noticed that Kelly's bike had been left in front of the house. Carol asked her daughter to move her bike to the backyard. As she did so, Kelly told her mother, "I love you, Mom. Have a good day." Carol was then driven to work by her husband, Leonard Hugall. By the time Carol had returned home that day, Kelly was missing. In the hours after realizing that Kelly was gone, two things were discovered. Kelly's bike had been left at the entrance of Ella Sharp Park, and a ticket had been supposedly purchased by Kelly for a bus ride from Jackson to Detroit. At the outset of this case, it seemed possible that Kelly may have decided to leave. It was even reported that she may have been seen boarding a bus for the ticket she had supposedly purchased. It wasn't long, though, until suspicions began to rise. Early on, the investigation turned from a runaway case to an abduction investigation. Now, the primary suspect, according to police, had been Leonard Hugall, Kelly's stepfather, from the very beginning. Leonard Hugall had been troubled from an early age. According to his mother, Leonard had been in and out of mental health facilities since the age of 13. The first recorded incident with the law that I could dig up in my research was from 1969, when Hugall was just 18 years old. One night in July of 1969, a family was distraught to find that their 12-year-old daughter had not returned home. Cindy Hayward had been walking home that day when she was approached by a man in a car. The man pulled out a gun and demanded that Cindy get into his car. Scared for her life, Cindy did as she was told. And over the next 4 days, she and Hugall barely left the car as they made their way from Fremont to Marquette. A tip-off led police in Marquette to believe that the suspect and the kidnapped girl from the Fremont News may be in their area. According to one news article at the time, the police were able to locate the car, a chase ensued, and Hugall had ended up crashing into a sand pile. And this brought an end to Cindy's abduction. Now the 12-year-old girl was returned safely to her family. I personally have trouble believing that this is the first crime committed by Leonard Hugall. As we will discuss, Hugall would go on to repeat these offenses throughout the years, his actions only getting worse over time. It wouldn't surprise me to know that he had started smaller and had hurt others before Cindy, or at very least threatened people. But as I said, this was the first offense that I could find during my research. The next large chunk of Hugall's life is a mystery to us, but we do know that eventually he married Kelly's mother, and the two lived together in Jackson, Michigan. Following Kelly's disappearance, Carol became more and more wary of Hugall. 4 years after Kelly disappeared, Carol confronted Hugall. His response, according to Carol, was to do up the laces of his shoes, get into his car, and as she put it, leave like a bat out of hell. It seems that they were officially separated from that point on, and that their divorce was eventually finalized in 1994. Now, a year prior to this finalization, however, another set of crimes would be committed by Leonard Hugall. In 1993, Hugall was living in the area of Micanopy, Florida. One night, he stopped by the home of a girlfriend of someone he worked with. He asked the woman if he could use her bathroom. When he left the bathroom, he was holding a gun, and he would go on to restrain the woman and her 5-year-old daughter before sexually assaulting the both of them. Now, in the end, Hugall was apprehended in Flagstaff, Arizona, and was charged with multiple counts of both burglary and sexual assault of both an adult and a minor. While researching this case, I came across more than one source that stated that Hugall was serving a 50-year sentence for the rape and murder of a woman and her daughter, but I want to confirm for everyone that that is not true. Now, according to the charges that Hugall pled guilty to, an article from when he was apprehended for the crimes and the girl who had been attacked herself, Hugall did not murder the two victims. While this particular false fact that has been spread in this case doesn't ultimately change anything too much as far as what we are discussing today, it is still important to note that when covering these cases, we need to be as accurate as possible. Multiple times while researching cases for this channel, I have come across information that has been touted as fact for years, sometimes even decades. only to find that it is completely untrue or highly unverifiable information with no true origin point in the case itself. If we spread misinformation about these cases, we could ultimately hurt the chances of anyone ever being caught. That is why I try my hardest to be as accurate as possible before presenting these things to you, and it is also why I provide my sources for you in every video. It is always important that we are able to verify these kinds of information ourselves, which is why I want you to be able to look at my sources, read them for yourself, and come to your own conclusions. Now, it was during this time in the Florida State Prison that Hugall was once again approached by officers investigating Kelly's disappearance. In 2004, the case had been officially reopened, and by 2006, Hugall was finally willing to talk. Hugall would go on to confess to having raped and murdered Kelly the day of her disappearance in 1984. Hugall claimed that after returning from dropping Carol off at work, he had told Kelly that he would take her to the county fair, something that she had been previously upset about because she was going to miss it. Rather than taking Kelly to the fair, though, Hugall took her to St. John's School where he worked. There he assaulted Kelly and then placed her in the trunk of his car. He then drove out to the Jackson Community College area where he stabbed Kelly to death and then buried her in a shallow grave. According to detectives on the case, blood evidence from 1984 that had been found in the home seemed to line up with Hugall's confession. Now, this leads me to believe that the blood evidence was likely something that Hugall had been wearing during the attack or something that he had had with him that day. At the time, they wouldn't have been able to test the blood for DNA, and we don't know how much blood evidence they discovered. It's quite possible that there wasn't enough to perform a proper test even at a later date. Hugall has not been formally charged with Kelly's murder. Investigators will charge him upon his release from the Florida State Prison, where he is currently scheduled for a potential release date in 2029. For Carol Hugall, she says that she doesn't like the term closure. She feels a little more at peace now that she knows what has happened to her daughter, but she says that there will never truly be closure. These days, Carol goes to the Fallen Victims of Homicide Memorial in Jackson, Michigan to think about her daughter. She remembers Kelly as a girl who loved Michael Jackson, drank Tang, and adored her little sister. Carol says, "I go there and sit and think and cry. I just look at her picture. Her picture shouldn't even be up there. This shouldn't have happened for her picture to be up here." Carol believes that if her daughter were still alive today, she may have wanted to be a lawyer or a doctor, and she probably would have liked to have kids of her own. Though Hugall had tried to lead police to Kelly's body, no remains have been found. Investigators believe that based off of Hugall's description of the shallow grave that he buried Kelly in, it would have been easy for animals to disinter her remains and scatter them over the years since her death. So what are your thoughts on this case? I know I don't usually cover solved cases, but I do feel that it is good from time to time to look at them because otherwise it does seem quite bleak, the topics that we do discuss here. So I thought that this could lighten it up just a little bit and remind us that every now and then these cases do get solved. My sources for today's video will be pinned as always in the top comment below this video. Thank you so much for watching today's case, and I will see you all again soon for another.